What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another video. Last night I was watching the Warcraft Reloaded podcast by Blazin' Bob, and the episode was titled "Is Season of Discovery Too Complicated?" So I watched this entire episode, and I really had a lot to say on this topic. So I figured I would make kind of like a video response to it and my take on, what I think about Season of Discovery in its, is it too complicated? Why will it not grow anymore? And all of those types of things. And I have a lot to say on this, and obviously this is my own personal opinion. I'm really curious what you guys think, so drop your comments down below. Let me know if what you think, if what I'm saying is an extremely hot take and it makes absolutely no sense, or if you agree with me, or maybe even just your takes. But my take on this, so they were talking about the simplified rune discoveries for some of the more complicated runes to get, like Dark Riders, stuff like that, Wild Gods, all that kind of stuff. How we're going to have it be bind on account in Season of Discovery, where you can just send it to an alt now. And then, that's really all that they've said that they were doing so far. And then Bob said in the podcast, if they were to just basically give everyone the runes right off the bat, he would roll an alt right now. And that's the first thing that I want to talk about here is the rune discovery. Next, where I want to get into the rating and why the numbers, obviously won't go up from here. And I don't even think they're going to go up for AQ or anything like that. I think BWL, we're going to be seeing the exact same numbers. We're going to be floating around 70 to 85,000 raiders, in my opinion, for the rest of Season of Discovery. And I'll explain that in just a minute. But talking about the runes, right? So they're simplifying some of the more complex rune discoveries. Like I said, Dark Riders, Wild Gods, any of those runes that are really kind of a pain in the ass to acquire. And you can now, buy them from the vendor and send them to an alt on your account. Like I said, Bob said if they gave all the runes to everyone from day one, like new players like that wanted to jump in right now, he would make an alt. My take on this is that I personally don't think that would grow Season of Discovery at all. And I think it's deeper than just the rune system and all this stuff. In the simplest sense here that I can say, is Season of Discovery too complicated? Yes, I do think it's too complicated, but I do not think that that is the main issue with it. It is very complicated in the fact that it's completely different than Vanilla Classic. He mentioned in the podcast that you can be someone who played Classic and you're jumping into Season of Discovery for the first time right now in Phase 4 or Phase 5, and you'd be completely lost, which I do think there is a lot of truth to that. It's more than just the runes to me, too. So let's say they did give everyone access to all of the runes. You can make a level 1 and have every single one of your runes from Phase 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 at this point, all from level 1. I still think that there would be an issue, and I don't think it would grow, at least for new players. Maybe people who are playing Season of Discovery as their main game, the only game they play, yes, probably would make some alts, right? But in terms of growing for new players, I don't think that would be the case, and that's because if you go level out in the world, it doesn't feel very alive. There's nobody out in the world doing anything. Simplifying the runes to a point where we already have them at level 1, which I agree with, would even also kind of hurt that as well. People would just dungeon grind the entire way. They would never need to be out in the world to acquire any of these runes. So the problem, and I talked about this in a video I made a couple of weeks ago, is that the world just feels dead, right? And I think there's a bigger problem at hand here. If you think about Vanilla, if you think about Classic, what makes Classic so special and so good is not the end game rating. It really isn't. The pre-bis grind is great. The rating is okay, but that's always the point of the lowest amount of players in any one of these freshes, or any version of Classic. You fall off after the first raid tier. That's completely normal. That's because the strengths to me for Classic, where Classic really shines is in that leveling experience, is in the fresh environment when everyone's out in the world leveling. And the reason for that is because of community. Everyone is excited. Everyone's hyped up to be leveling together. That lasts for months. It lasts for a few months at least. And that is the biggest driving force. So I think Season of Discovery kind of fell short in that regard. They made the entire thing, every single phase was end game, right? So they took one of Classic's greatest weaknesses and made that the sole point of Season of Discovery. They made it faster to level. They made raids at the end of every leveling phase. They halted your leveling experience, so people maybe that aren't interested in raiding and just like leveling, leveled to 25 10 times on some alts and just didn't even come back for the next phase. I think that is a major problem, and that was done because Season of Discovery is seasonal, right? It's seasonal, or it's a beta for Classic Plus, whatever we want to call it at this point. It is seasonal, which in my opinion does not work for Classic World of Warcraft. It just doesn't. It will never retain players, in my opinion. And there's a lot of people out there that I know personally, just my own personal friends, that didn't even touch Season of Discovery because it was seasonal. So that is something that I think went wrong there. They took the focus for Season of Discovery, whereas in Phase 1, the focus was on exploration and adventure and leveling, right? No one really cared about BFD. It was fun to do on a bunch of alts, but people were just enjoying leveling in the nostalgic zones and finding the runes and all that stuff, right? They played to classic, vanilla WoW's strengths, which was exploration, discovery, community. I mean, in Phase 1, my guild alone, we were having fight clubs where we were betting gold on people dueling in the Gurubashi Arena at level 25. It was so much fun. They completely shifted their focus after Phase 1, and they went to a more endgame focused Season of Discovery, which as you can clearly see from the numbers on Ironforge Pro, every single phase got smaller, and smaller. And now here we are in Phase 4 with Molten Core. BWL comes out in 2 days, and we are, we're at like the lowest point that we've ever been at, even lower than Phase 3, which was considered by most the worst phase in Season of Discovery. And that's my opinion, is that is why that has happened. They took the greatest weakness of Classic, which is the end game. That is when it's at its lowest point in players, and they made Season of Discovery all about the end game. They sped up the leveling process. They made raids for every single leveling bracket. They stopped you from leveling. They made ranking in PvP easier. And all of these things, the leveling being faster, that takes a massive chunk out of one of Vanilla's strengths, right? The Classic era world. That's a massive strength for the game, was the world and the leveling and how long it took you to get to cap level. So to speed that up right off the bat, you're taking away half the content. You're letting people burn out quicker. You're letting people give up more. There's people who play vanilla in a completely different way, and I would argue that the majority of the player base plays for the leveling. A lot of players are casual about it. They never even step foot in a raid. They'll level a few alts to level 35, take a break for the holidays, come back after that, push to like 45. They go play the new Call of Duty for a couple of weeks, then they come back and they keep leveling. That is basically how vanilla is played by most of the casual players. It takes them a long time to get to endgame. And when you force everyone to endgame as fast as possible, I just think it takes away so much content, and that's why people got burnt out and bored. And on top of that, Season of Discovery, in my opinion, has, it's fun, and I've loved it the entire time. I am going to be raiding Blackwing Lair. I'm looking forward to that just to see what it's like. But from what I've seen so far, it's just Blackwing Lair, right? You have your 5 affixes that you can choose from. If you pick 3, I think you get an extra piece of loot. There's really no incentive to pick the Black Drake affix, which makes, there be more mechanics in BWL. There's no real incentive to pick that, so I don't see why anyone would. You would just pick the 3 easiest affixes to get a little bit more loot, right? If there's no incentive, why do it? And I do just feel like this is something, it's a very good learning experience for Blizzard. And I've spent the last month pretty much raid logging on Season of Discovery. I'm actually in Bob's raid group for Molten Core. But I've been playing retail for the past month, and I'm not a retail player usually. I really don't ever enjoy it, but I am really enjoying it right now. And I'll be honest with you guys, SOD kind of segued me into that. So whether that was Blizzard's plan or not, I got used to the idea of having all these new spells and the gameplay being a little bit faster and all this, and I'm really enjoying retail. I'm pushing Mythic Keys. I'm doing the raid, ranking in arenas, and I think it's a lot of fun. And there's also another really interesting thing that I realized by playing retail for the past month, and that is that Season of Discovery is closer to retail than it is to vanilla WoW. And the only thing that Season of Discovery has that makes it vanilla WoW classic era-ish is the world and the fact that you're capped at level 60. it plays more similarly to retail than it does to vanilla or classic WoW, which is actually crazy to see. So I can see, though, how if this was like a mind game that Blizzard was trying to play on everyone to get them to try out the new retail expansion, I completely get it, and they got me. It worked. I'm having a blast on retail right now. Now, I probably won't play it forever. You know, maybe a few more weeks of this this phase in retail. I'll come back for the 20th anniversary event. But, you know, if we get a fresh hardcore or a fresh classic or whatever, that's going to be my jam. I absolutely love it. But the seasonal game mode for Season of Discovery, I think, is why it will not grow any longer. Why are people going to jump in and start playing now when everyone is in endgame? The world is pretty much empty for the most part. Yes, there are people leveling, but it is not even remotely close to a fresh. And some really good indicators of the player base on a seasonal WoW server were the fact that going to 20-player raids in, I think, what it was, a phase 3, right? Sunken Temple. Going to 20-player raids, like, destroyed the game for a while. It destroyed guilds, it destroyed the game. So that goes to show you that the player base for seasonal WoW and Season of Discovery is completely different than classic WoW. Because you can go on Classic Era right now, which has like 1/10 of the population of Season of Discovery, and there are guilds still running 40-player raids. So why is it that in Season of Discovery, going from 10-player raids to 20-player raids destroyed the game and people couldn't do it, and you couldn't fill these groups with people who were capable of doing it? But in Classic Era, which has literally 1/10, maybe even less of the player base of Season of Discovery, people are still clearing 40-player raids with 40 people, some guilds, right? So it just really goes to show you that it's a different type of player that is really was playing Season of Discovery at the time. I think it has just strayed very far from what classic WoW is. And now after playing retail, which a lot of people have, I've realized that if I want that sped up, faster experience, I'd rather play retail, where there's new content every few weeks, where there's tons of different activities to do at endgame. You know, and not just spamming the same dungeon over and over for like one piece of gear. You can do arenas, you can do Mythic Plus, you can do the raids, you can do delves, you have your world quests. They reworked the entire profession system. There's a lot going on in retail to do if you want a more full experience for World of Warcraft. But Classic will always have my heart, especially Vanilla. Vanilla and TBC are my favorite parts of WoW. But after playing retail now for the past month, when I think about like Classic Plus and what I would want that to be, I think it kind of toned down what I think Classic Plus should actually be in my mind. I don't want it to be closer to retail like Season of Discovery. I want Classic Plus to be classic with a twist, right? I think that spell-wise, ability-wise, talent-wise, yes, some talents need to change, but I think that it needs to stay a little bit more true to what Classic is supposed to be, if that makes sense. And I think that that is a major issue in what is like going on here. Like that is like the actual problem. That is why Season of Discovery is dying, whether people believe it or not, or want to hear it or not. Yeah, you could still play it, but it is not going to ever be as big as it was in phase 1 or phase 2. It's just not going to happen. It just won't. There's nothing truly nostalgic about it anymore. It's not really classic. It's closer to retail than it is to classic. And yeah, that's my thoughts, my take on this whole situation. I don't think Simplified Runes would make it grow. I really don't think anything they do can make it grow. Maybe when they release a new raid like Karazhan or Scarlet Monastery or something, like maybe that will bring some players back in a bigger spike than we're seeing for Molten Core and BWL, because it's just new, right? Especially content creators are going to want to jump in there and get some content out of it. But yeah, that's my take on it. I wanted to make this kind of like a video response to Bob, and you know, just give my take on it. Like if I was on the podcast, this is pretty much what I would have said. But yeah, that's it. Let me know what you guys think about that down in the comments below. I try to make this interesting, throw some footage in the background so it's not just me talking and ranting. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, listening in. Subscribe to the channel. Follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/hammerdance. I stream every weeknight, 8 p.m. Eastern time, Monday through Friday. Link is in the description below. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching and listening in. See you all in the next one.